Morning. It is Saturday, October 26th. And so you know what that means. We are getting into Proverbs chapter 26. If you're interested in any of the resources that I used in today's Bible study, go ahead and look at the description box because everything that I used is right there. And then too, be sure to comment the verses that stood out to you. And I'm going to tell you the verses that stood out to me. So girl, it is 8 o'clock in the morning. I don't know why I'm up this early, but this is where we at. So do me a favor. Comment the verses that stood out to you, and I'm going to tell you the ones that stood out to me. And I'm going to try to get through this at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. Please don't ask me why I'm up because I don't even know. I ain't even going to hold you. Getting right into it, let's look at verses 4 and 5, but I am checking these out in the CEV version. It says, "Don't make a fool of yourself by answering a fool. But if you answer any fools, show how foolish they are so they won't feel smart." And when I read it, I was like, dang, men of Hezekiah, can you be more specific? That is messy. But then I had to get a little bit deeper into it. When I first read it, I only highlighted verse 4. Don't make a fool of yourself by answering a fool, because that immediately makes sense because everything doesn't deserve a response. And there are situations where you almost feel stupid responding to a situation where somebody literally was not using wisdom. Like, it's an obvious answer and you feel like you responding to it just lowers your vibration. You know what I'm saying? So that made sense. But then when I reread it in the CEV version, because originally I read it in the NKJV, so I like to read it first in the less watered down version to see if I can grasp it before I go to the CEV. So when I first read it in the NKJV version in my Women's Study Bible, verse 4 is the first one that stood out to me. But then a lot of times I go back and I read it again in the CEV just to see if there's any other perspective that I need to be taking on it, because CEV is more watered down. It's easier for me to understand. So when I read it again, verse 5 made sense. They were a couple. They were a duo. So let's talk about verse 5. 5 says, "But if you answer any fools, show how foolish they are so they won't feel smart." When I read that, it's like, listen, 4 and 5 together. There's going to be a lot of circumstances where it is going to be better for you to not even respond to a foolish response, to not even respond to someone trying to diminish your character, to not even respond to someone who is making a fool of themselves. A lot of times it makes, what if they're drunk or whatever? A lot of times it makes more sense for you not to even respond. A closed mouth, it makes more sense than responding. But then there are times where response to a fool is needed. And it's so blunt how they put it, where they won't feel smart. It's so blunt with that. Me personally, I don't think it's meant to diminish, them. I think it's meant to correct them in a godly way, correct them with love and compassion, because the basis of our walk with God is love and compassion. Not to be like, oh, you were it. No, it's not meant for that. Every time that we correct people, we should be correcting them out of godly wisdom and godly love, because our goal is to show the love of God. And at once we all were fools. And there's still certain situations where we probably are foolish because we lack wisdom. We lack understanding. We lack the ability to receive it. There's seasons or times in our lives when someone's trying to correct us out of godly love. I know for myself at least, and I was too foolish to accept it. And there's going to be more times like that where I'm too foolish to accept the godly correction because I'm human and I make mistakes. So humbling myself in that situation and realizing, listen, there's going to be times when someone's going to approach me foolishly and my response is not even required. And there's going to be times when someone approaches me foolishly and a response is needed, but I still have to remain with compassion and with love and with understanding and give that to them with love and understanding. This is how I'm taking it. This is just how I'm taking it when I'm reading it. But get into your word. What is God telling you when you're reading Proverbs 26 verses 4 and 5? What is he saying to you? When you're looking at either version, either translation, how is that relaying to you? This is what is coming to me. This is what I feel like God is telling me. And our goal, again, is to gain godly wisdom. That is our goal. And, when it comes time for an opportunity for you to address a fool, to address someone who is foolish and who is lacking that wisdom, pray about it. Ask God how you should handle it. God, are you telling me to be silent? There's been times when I wanted to address a situation and God was like, shut it up. I'm like, okay, well, but can I just say this one thing? And God is like, shut it up. Okay, all right. I'll be quiet, Jesus. I'll be quiet. But there's other times when God is calling me to correct in a godly way. So what is God telling you to do? Those situations are going to come up And how do you handle that? You pray on it. God, give me the words to say or tell me to be silent. And God will direct you. Number 11 stood out to me immediately when I read it in the NKJV version because I've heard it for so long. A dog returns to his own vomit, so a fool returns to his folly. I've been verse 11 several times. I've been chapter 26, verse 11 several times. Okay. So I can't hold that against nobody because it's been me. And it's not no compliment. I'm not excited about it. I just think it's funny that that verse, stood out to me today because it is like that. Like I have returned to my foolish ways several times. I think I told you this before. I grew up in church. You hear me? My grandpa passed away when I was young. I was in high school. I was like a freshman and my grandpa passed away, and he was the reason why I made it to church every Sunday like I did. And when my grandpa passed away, it wasn't that I didn't like God. It wasn't that I hated God. I knew God was real. I knew he loved me, but I strayed away, and I went into foolish behaviors. And even as an adult, I came to God and I left, and I came to God and I left. And in those seasons where I left, I returned to a lot of foolish behaviors. And, this reminds me, have you ever seen a dog go back and eat his own vomit? Like, it reminds me of the character of a fool and times that I was a fool, and reminding myself, I don't want to be that. Whatever God pulled me from, I don't want to go back to that. I don't want to be that person. The person that I was when I was ripping around in the streets, I don't want to be her. I don't want to return to those foolish ways. And it's just a staple for me. It's just one of those verses that you hear all your life. And so when you see it again in your own personal reading, it's like, it just hits different. It's like, yep, I remember that. Not least verses 14 and 15. And these I'm going to read in the CEV version. A door turns on its own hinges, but a lazy person just turns over in bed. Some of us are so lazy that we won't even lift a hand to feed ourselves. Whoop! Boy, they throwing shade when I tell you 14 to 15 are shady. And chapter 26 talks a lot about being lazy. It talks a lot about being foolish. It talks a lot about lying. It talks a lot about all that. And being a lazy person will keep you from your purpose. Because you're going to be stuck in your bed, rolling around in your bed instead of getting up and handling business, not trying to do anything for yourself. And, immediately, this reminds me of seasons when I was severely depressed and laying in the bed. I didn't want to do nothing. I didn't want to see nobody. I didn't want to talk to nobody. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to do anything for myself. Seasons of depression put me there. It did. It definitely put me there. And this is reminding me, those seasons are going to come when I feel at my lowest. And when I feel at my lowest, standing on this word right here, 14 to 15, this may help me climb out of the bed. Baby, I don't want to be no lazy person. God has a calling for each and every one of us. God has something for us. God has something for us to do. And if you're someone who you are dealing with something so heavy that it is keeping you stuck. I mean, think about it. A lazy person turning over in their bed, they're stuck there. They don't want to do anything for themselves because they're just so down. Just remember that God has so much more for you. He has so much more for you. He loves you. He cares about you. He cherishes you. He created you. He formed you in your mother's womb. He loves you so much. Trust me, he has much more for you than the current state that you're in right now. And so for me, it was a reminder of the seasons where I was going through that. It's something to stand on when I am in that mode where I feel like I've had enough. I'm tired. I'm rolling over in my bed. I'm giving up. I don't even want to do nothing for myself. God has so much more for me. And in Proverbs is teaching me that God has so much more for me. The wisdom that I'm gaining, and then I'm sure that you're gaining from reading Proverbs in this Proverbs challenge, is also reminding us God has so much for us. So much. And we make the decision every day to either be a fool or person of wiseness. We make a decision to either be productive or to be lazy. We make a decision to read God's word or not. We make a decision to walk like a godly person and walk righteous or not. And the more you gain godly wisdom, the less you want to be the latter. The less you want to be lazy. The less you want to be foolish. The less you want to be down and depressed. The more you want to operate in ways that glorify God and help other people. So let me know what you got. Bye.